Hi, this is Mrs. Warren, and if you're watching this, you were absent on Friday, March 23rd, 2018. This is day 3 of the causes of the Civil War, American Civil War. Now, you might have already taken some notes on page 61 as we introduced it on Wednesday, and you're just going to continue to take notes and listen to the story as we go under your notes on page 61. Please watch any videos that are offered, and I'm going to be moving pretty quickly through this because you can pause at any time and write the notes. Please make sure that you are paying attention to the video and not just copying the notes, as you won't know the story or the information if you do so. First thing I would like you to do is go to this website that is shown there that take you to YouTube, and there's an overall video of everything that we're going to be talking about up until the days of the Civil War. Now, the first compromise or conflict that we have that's early on is 1820. Now, this is during the 5th president, James Monroe. At the time, the free states up here and the slave states down here had an equal balance of power in the Senate. Now, the South was very concerned about this balance of power because the North had so many more votes in the House of Representatives. The only way that they could have any control is to keep an even amount in the Senate, because every state gets an equal amount of votes. So when Missouri wanted to come in as a slave state, of course the free states did not want the South to have more control in the Senate. So they kind of stopped Missouri coming in. Nation knew this was a problem, and they brought Maine in as a compromise. So it evened out the balance of power once again. But to make sure this wouldn't happen, they decided that they would draw a line, and any future states that would enter into this territory would be free, and everybody underneath it would become slave states. Now, this compromise worked for about 30 years, and everybody was happy with it, and things stayed pretty equal. Now, during the time period between the Missouri Compromise and the next conflict, resistance is growing in the abolitionist movement. More papers are being published. There's a few more slave rebellions, and the South is getting really nervous about the North's intentions with their way of life and the issues of slavery. Of course, we have the Nullification Crisis. The Nullification Crisis was a showing of South Carolina's stubbornness to break away from the Union if they weren't given the right to nullify the protective tariff. We've gone through this before in another class. That was just one incident of the coming of more and more conflict within the states. Abolitionists were being attacked. There was murders. There was attacks on people's printing presses who were printing abolitionist newspapers. And as time goes on, you can see the scale down here. Slave and free states are still remaining as equal as they can. Now, there was a suggestion after the Mexican War, and we obtained all this new territory. The question was, would this be open to slavery? And there was a proposal to ban slavery in this area, but again, it passed in the northern strong House of Representatives, but because of the equality, as you can see here, the southern states have a little bit more power, they were able to stop that in the Senate twice. So their strategy of keeping an equal balance in Congress, where the power is, was working. Then we come to the year 1850. Now, the Missouri Compromise line that lies right here was still in effect, but the problem lied with California. California, because so many people rushed there during the gold rush in 1849, California was eligible to become a state, but they wanted to enter the Union as a free state, which would give the northern states more power in the Senate. Of course, the southern states did not agree with this, and they wanted something in return. To make this an even trade, the North got California, And they also banned any slave trade in Washington, D.C. Now the South, what they got, that new territory, New Mexico and Utah, had what's called popular sovereignty. That's a big word in this unit. That means any states that develop in that area would now have the choice, popular sovereignty meaning that the voters got to choose whether or not that they would be a slave or a free state. That meant that area was open to the expansion of slavery. They also got what was called a stronger Fugitive Slave Law. Now, we talked about the Fugitive Slave Law and how in the North, if you came across a slave and if you helped that slave escape, or if you hid them or did not report that person to the proper authorities, that you yourself could be fined or jailed. The Northerners really did not like this law because it made them feel like they were being involved and supported slavery. Now the notes, you do the same format as the Missouri Compromise notes. This is just a simple subtitle and bullets. And again, you can pause this video to take the notes in your notebook. Okay, you won't have to do the brain snack. As I was saying before, the Fugitive Slave Law really hit a nerve in the North. They did not want to help the South maintain the ownership of their slaves, and they saw this as an invasion of their freedom. Now, I want you to read over. This is an advertisement looking for a man looking for his slaves, and the idea of having penalties placed on Northerners who help them. Please read over this. This is another sign that was put up in the North in Massachusetts, where they wanted to warn the people of the policemen and bounty hunters or people who were being captured and returned to slavery, and even kidnappers. There were times that slave catchers, because they got money every time they returned a slave, were able to kidnap free men, free black men and women of the North and sell them into slavery for a profit. I mentioned the movie 12 Years a Slave. It came out a couple years ago and it got a lot of awards. I've included the trailer. It is a rated R movie, so if you were interested in this and would like to know more about Solomon Northup, who was kidnapped and sold back into slavery, and he was 12 years a slave until he was able to get his freedom. Now, the next thing that stirred up things was a lady named Harriet Beecher Stowe, and she wrote a book that would ignite the nation. The book was called Uncle Tom's Cabin. This was a dramatization of a fictional story of a slave and the brutalities of slavery. And throughout the book, people would read it and didn't realize that slavery is so horrible, because a lot of people in the North either were disinterested or had no contact or personal idea about it, and some had never even seen a black person before. And once reading the book, they were all on board and really wanted to help the abolitionist movement and became much more outraged. And of course, the South said, this is all lies, this is not true. And they were banning the book, burning the book in the South, and the people in the North were looking at slavery in a much more serious way. And again, add these notes to your notes. Skip a line underneath your last subtitle. Gotta skip that one. So as you can see here, this is 1820 with the Missouri Compromise. The green is free states, the blue are slave states or slave territory. Now, as time went on, in 1850, the black territory is now open to slavery. It's left in the hands of the voters. But then our next subject, you're going to see it grow even further. If you have any questions about today's lesson, please let me know. And I'll see you tomorrow.